Sherwin Bryce-Pease has been watching this particular address by President Cyril Ramaphosa to the UN General Assembly. And of course, Sherwin, he's not mincing his words again on what is taking place in Gaza, and at the same time also on what he says, needs to be changes that are made when it comes to the UN Security Council, going as far as saying that it cannot continue to be an exclusive club of 5 nations.
Yeah, let me take you through the phases, Bongiwe, of what the president did in this address. He talked about South Africa's commitment to multilateralism and the United Nations as an institution in particular, given the big role the United Nations played in terms of South Africa's transition away from apartheid to democracy. So that was the beginning of that speech. He then talked about the government of national unity, talking about the political culture in South Africa that had evolved and matured, really striking a positive tone, as he did yesterday in terms of his engagement with business leaders, now in a room full of political leaders, talking about essentially something that doesn't really have much to do with geopolitics, but very much a domestic issue that he is putting front and center, essentially not sweeping the GNU under the carpet, but essentially putting it on a pedestal in front of an assembly of nations. Spent a lot of time on Gaza, as you well point out. Talked about South Africa's experience. South Africa knows what apartheid looks like, essentially pointing to the fact that South Africa believes there is apartheid being perpetrated against the Palestinian people, not only in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, in terms of the expansion of settlements that we are seeing there, settlements that go against the prescripts of international law. He talked about the case at the ICJ. He thanked UN member states, for many of them which are in support of South Africa's position in terms of seeking to prevent Israel from continuing what it believes to be a genocide, questioning Israel's obligations in terms of the 1948 Genocide Convention. He talked about reform of the UN Security Council, right? A big discussion that is still ongoing here in terms of the intergovernmental negotiations. Africa in support of 2 permanent seats with a veto, but that, of course, is something the United States doesn't support. So a give and take still going in terms of that discussion. He talked about the importance of vaccines to deal with the Mpox outbreak in Africa, the need to reform the financial architecture, saying he supports the view of the Secretary General, talking about how debt is essentially an albatross around the neck of developing countries, particularly as they seek to address issues of climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals, supporting a reform of the international financial institutions. You know, earlier this year, we heard from the United Nations experts that say some countries, Bongiwe, are paying more on their debt repayments than they are investing in education domestically and health. So this is a big problem that needs to be sorted out if, as we all want to do, is to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. He talked about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that this is a catalytic in terms of economic prosperity in Africa. Climate change, of course, lamenting the fact that developing countries have not come to the fore in terms of their financial commitments. He says Africa is bearing the brunt of something they did not create. The industrialized nations, he says, are not meeting their financial commitments. There is a need for predictable and sustainable financing. And so a full breadth of what the president, starting with a commitment to multilateralism and ending with the need for developed countries to meet their commitments in terms of sustainable development.
And of course, Sherwin, it was not only about this moment as well, but also about the different other moments that you and I have been speaking about, selling South Africa, saying that there are a number of opportunities that different countries in the United States can in fact seize. And when speaking even about, South Africa and its growth prospects, he does talk about the fact that there needs to be even deeper conversations around minerals and all of that as well.
Look, I'm sure what the president said in that address probably doesn't hit South Africans that are sort of living through this transition. There's a great deal of unemployment in South Africa. There's a great deal of social inequity, the lack of inclusion, youth unemployment at record levels. We're getting the lights on now, which is a sea change from where we were 6, 7, 8 months ago. And so the president, in his sense, putting forward a very positive perspective on what is happening in South Africa, and that's for the citizenry in South Africa to debate. He says we are in a new era, one of great promise, in what some have called the second miracle. South Africans of all races have rallied behind the government of national unity. That's probably debatable as well. We are making headway in resolving some of our most pressing challenges. Our economy has begun to improve, and investor confidence is on the rise. And the big test of that is going to be if, in terms of their engagements in New York, in terms of their engagement with investors, if they can get foreign direct investment up so that that can also play a role in catalyzing economic growth, which, as you well know, has been very tepid in South Africa, the 0.1%, the 0.2%, when the economy needs to be growing at 5, 6, 7% to really make a dent in some of the social inequity, in particular unemployment, that's needed to happen. So the president certainly putting on a very positive front here in terms of the government of national unity. It's certainly going to be a statement that will be debated, I'm sure, in the days and weeks ahead.
Of course, quite a big one, Sherwin. And one wonders then who is still left when it comes to the different countries that still need to speak.
Well, there are 193 member states at the United Nations. We are in day one, Bongiwe. President was number 9 on the list, and so we have a whole day here that they'll speak until 9 p.m. our time, around 3 p.m. South African time, 3 a.m. South African time tomorrow. I don't know if you're going to stay up for that, but that's just day one, and then we've got a whole day tomorrow, the whole week, till Monday next week. So 193 members giving statements that one can't limit, given the positions of the people that are giving them, heads of state and government. You can't tell them to sit down or to shut up. So we'll be here for a while.
It's going to be definitely a while indeed. And then for Team South Africa, is this it, or do you still have other moments that you need to really capture through the lens?
I mean, we can live and hope and dream, but no, that's not it for South Africa. President Ramaphosa this afternoon will speak at an event on health, Bongiwe, in particular dealing with adolescent, children's and women's health. He is the chair of the Leaders Net in that regard. So he's speaking at a place called the Ford Foundation at around 9:30 p.m. South African time. We'll also take that address live. And then, of course, tomorrow, on Wednesday, he will be engaged in a high-level discussion here at the United Nations. I believe that the Secretary General will be there. On the G20, South Africa is, of course, the incoming chair of the G20. He will take over from Brazil. He will then hand over after South Africa's term to the United States. So we're not sure who's all going to be in the room tomorrow, but there's certainly going to be some elements in relation to the financial health, right? The G20 is very focused on the global economy. The president talking that when saying in that address earlier that when South Africa assumes the chair of the G20, they will be advocating on behalf of the African continent. And then tomorrow we are promised a one-on-one with the president at the conclusion of his itinerary. We'll confirm the timing of that, but that's certainly something to look forward to.
I definitely am looking forward to that, and what questions then he faces, especially on the GNU show. But really this issue of adolescence and health is one that we've been focusing a lot on here, especially when it comes to issues of access. So certainly we'll be looking closely at that one as well. Thank you so much, Sherwin, for that update.